My name's Joan, I'm your games mistress, and here's a little bit about playfulness. Most people in my experience seem to have a pretty positive reaction to the word playful, at least when they hear it. I mean, the idea of playfulness seems popular on the surface in theory, but when you look a little closer at the way people in this culture tend to respond to the thing itself, there's actually this really intense social stigma against playfulness. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about why I think that's a really serious and urgent problem, and not just here at the game table. My definition of playfulness has two parts, two requirements. Being playful means making a sincere effort to succeed at something, while at the same time being comfortable with the possibility that you might fail. Playfulness is an inherently joyful state, which allows us to be creative and experimental and free in many different fields, whether it's in art or business, relationships, pretty much anywhere where we don't already know the correct course of action ahead of time, that we're supposed to do this. And no big surprise, being playful is also essential if you have any intention of having a good time playing games.
Wait, there's a situation where you can't be playful?
I hate to break this to you, Steffi.
What?
The best game I know of to illustrate this is a party game called Telestrations. Let me teach you how it works. Each player receives a little plastic booklet like this one and a dry erase marker. You're going to write your name on the cover, and then you're going to get a secret word or phrase, and you write that on page 1. And then you turn the page, and now you have to draw a picture of whatever that word or phrase is, just like in Pictionary. And it's probably going to be a really bad picture because you've only got about 30 seconds to do it. So then when time's up, you're going to pass your booklet to the player on your left. Player on your right passes you a booklet, and it's open to a page that has a not very well drawn picture of some kind. And so you have to try to guess what it is, even though you probably have no idea. But you take a shot. You turn the page, and you write your guess on there. And then you pass that booklet to the player on your left. Player on your right passes you their booklet, and it's open to a page that has a word or a phrase on it. And you now have 30 seconds to draw a picture of that on the next page. And so on. Draw and pass, guess and pass. Keep going till your booklet comes all the way back around to you, and then it's time for show and tell. Okay, so my secret word was, and I drew, and they thought that was a, and she drew this picture of that, which he thought was a, and so on. So by the time your booklet gets all the way back to you, the original meaning has been completely lost, and most of the time everybody gets a really good laugh out of it. Usually this game is a real crowd pleaser, and that's not in spite of the fact that everybody fails at it, it's because everybody fails at it. But this game doesn't work every time. There are two things, in my experience, that can stop Telestrations from being all that fun. First of all, if everyone at the table is actually really good at drawing, like if your secret word is cheese and everybody's drawing clearly looks like a piece of cheese and nobody makes any wrong guesses, that's actually pretty boring.
Yeah, the lesson is don't be good at things.
Or use your offhand.
Or don't be good at things.
That works too. I actually like to make people use their offhand if they're really good at drawing in Telestrations. It sort of brings them down to their level. Either that...
Of course you do. You put the mistress in games.
Either that, or I just give them really, really weird prompts. Like, I mean, cheese is not a great prompt, but marching band, on the other hand. Even somebody who's really good at drawing can end up doing something seriously goofy with that. The other thing that stops it from being fun is when there's somebody at the table who's just not even trying, and visibly not trying. Like, they're just doing random scribbles instead of drawings, and guessing random words instead of genuinely trying to figure them out. It's just going, it doesn't matter, not gonna bother trying anyway. When that happens, it just sucks all the fun out of the room for everyone, including them. In other words, in order for this game to work, all the players have to approach it playfully. They have to make a sincere effort and be okay with it if those efforts fail. Now, I contend that this is not only the case with Telestrations, not only the case with party games, but actually with all games, period. Even supposedly serious games like chess. I mean, if you're not invested enough to at least try to play it as well as you reasonably can, then it's no fun. And if you can't bear the thought of making a mistake for whatever reason, that ruins it too, and not just for you, but for everyone who plays with you too. Playfulness is actually good for a lot of things though, not just games. Whenever you're in any situation where there is no correct answer that you can know ahead of time, or whenever you're facing some problem that nobody knows exactly how to solve, the fear of doing it wrong can prevent you from even trying. But a playful mindset, where you're okay with failing as long as you sincerely gave it your best shot, can allow you to accomplish brand new things if you succeed. And even if you fail, you can still get valuable and potentially hilarious information about what doesn't work. Playfulness is genuinely powerful stuff, and we can use it to accomplish great things. Now, I've explained all of this stuff many times to a lot of different kinds of people over many years, and not a single person has ever told me that they find any of it hard to understand. Everybody seems to get it. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if you already pretty much knew all of this before you even began watching this video. You might not have put it into words, but still. But in the decade that I've spent recommending and teaching games at the cafe, it's become very, very clear to me that many people, perhaps even most people around here at least, find it a real struggle to engage with games playfully. So why is that? Well, it goes back to that stigma that I mentioned earlier. As children, most of us were pretty comfortable with just trying things, not knowing if we're going to succeed or fail. I mean, that old Ken Robinson TED Talk has aged pretty badly in some ways, but the stuff that he said about kids still applies today, I think. I mean, if they don't know, they'll have a go. And our educational system still does seem deliberately designed to destroy their capacity to do that. I mean, in most schools, if you try something different, even if that something turns out to be useful or interesting or correct, you'll probably be told to do it over again in the correct way. Meaning, of course, the same way everybody else did.
Yeah, and when's the last time that you took a test and you got it wrong and you got to take it over again? It's a one chance, and if you fail, there's your black mark. You're a failure.
Yeah, you really don't have a lot of freedom to experiment when you only have one try.
Exactly. One try at the essay, one try at the project, one try at the test, and then if you fail, you're done and everything's awful.
You see this in the workplace too. If you work for a big company and you come up with some idea for a change that could make things better, they probably won't even try it out to see if it's going to work. And on the rare occasion when they do, you're definitely going to be punished if it fails. And that's even if there was no way to know for sure that it was going to fail, even if there could have been some real benefit to it if it had worked. And if it does work, there's still a good chance that you'll be punished for it. Probably by people in the company who were benefiting somehow from the old way of doing things and are now annoyed with you for changing it. We see this over and over again in families, in government, in social media, in every social system that we have. It just reinforces that stigma against ever attempting any action where you might be seen to fail. Whenever you're put into a situation where you have a chance to act on something, you're really only given two acceptable options. You have to either succeed brilliantly in exactly the way you intended to, or don't make the attempt at all. We've been meticulously taught this, had mercilessly drilled into us, that any other option will be punished with mockery, rejection, ostracism, whatever else people can think to do to you. It's not always true, of course, but that is the lesson that we're taught. There's this one movie clip that really kind of sums it up for me. It's from this movie called Moneyball, and it's about a Major League Baseball team that's not doing particularly well, and they've just taken a tough loss, and the team's back in the locker room, and they're trying to shake it off. They're trying to sort of remind themselves that this is still a game after all. It's supposed to be fun, and they're actually really lucky to be able to play together as a team for a living. And then our hero coach character, who's played by Brad Pitt, walks in. And this guy's basically like the anti-Ted Lasso, and he's also the clearest illustration I have ever seen of what our society actually believes about play and games deep down, not what we tell ourselves we believe. Here's a link. The scene's about 1.5 minutes long. Just go watch it and then come back here. Like, really do go and watch this thing. It's actually important to the point that I'm trying to make here.
You heard the lady.
Okay, so did you catch the message behind this scene? What we're being told here is that it's better not to play at all than to play and lose. How dare you have a good time playing a game you didn't win? What the hell's wrong with you? Don't you understand that winning is the only acceptable outcome? If you can't win, don't bother playing, and definitely don't have fun.
Yeah.
You tell him, Brad Pitt. I mean, that's the message. It's a terrible message, but we get it over and over and over again, starting from childhood through school, work, family, everywhere. When the penalty for failure is so much worse than the penalty for not trying, only a fool would try. Unless, of course, they had some way of being certain of the outcome beforehand. I watch people struggle with this every time I go to work. People approach that huge wall of beautiful games at the back of the cafe with all these exciting titles they could try, all these experiences that they could immerse themselves in, and so often they just stick to Monopoly, Guess Who, Snakes and Ladders, Cards Against Humanity, you know the ones. And there's nothing inherently wrong with those titles. They're fine games, but they have something in common, and that is they don't require you to try. No effort required, sincere or otherwise, which means you don't have to be playful. Now, there are situations when it's not a good idea to experiment. I mean, if you're doing open heart surgery, or if you're trying to land a passenger airplane, that might not be the best opportunity for a playful approach, but there are...
High-stakes playfulness. Extreme playfulness.
Ah, so 90s. But these are people who have deliberately gone out of their way to travel to a board game cafe. They've made that much of an effort to go to a place where it's going to be expected that people will be playing games. And even there, in what might be the only place in their lives where they're expected to be playful, they're still too frightened to try. The specter of failure is too terrifying.
It's because they heard about that open heart surgeon.
And of course, it's not always fear. Sometimes it's nothing more than personal taste. Some people have a genuine preference for things that are familiar and comfortable over things that are new and different, and that's fine. After a long week of work, some people might be just too tired to learn a new game, and they'll just want to shut their brains off and play something fun. Also fine. But when I walk up to somebody and I ask them as gently as possible if maybe they'd like to try something a little different this time, usually what happens is that they cast their eyes downward, they chuckle uncomfortably, and they tell me that they're not smart enough for that. That's not preference talking. That's not exhaustion. That's a lifetime's worth of conditioned fear and shame. This is what happens when we drill it into everyone's heart and soul that you're only allowed to succeed effortlessly or not try at all. Nobody can feel comfortable with the thought of trying and failing. Nobody can feel free to be playful. Not at work, not at school, not even at the game table. The one place where it's not only permitted, not only expected, but actually necessary if you want the thing that you're trying to do to actually work. Okay, obviously, I have a lot of strong feelings about this subject. It's a big part of the reason why I've dedicated my life to trying to rehabilitate playfulness as a virtue. And I've never seen a better way to help people to overcome their fear of failure than to let them have fun playing games. For a lot of the people who need it most, though, the resistance to the whole idea can be pretty intense, and learning how to overcome it has been one of the toughest challenges I have ever faced. Here are some of the things that I've tried. The first and arguably most important thing you can do is to really make an effort to understand where their resistance is coming from. Somebody who talks about seeing games as an unproductive waste of time is going to need a different approach from somebody who is clearly struggling with anxiety or post-traumatic stress. And you're going to have to bear in mind also that people will not always feel comfortable enough to tell you the real reasons behind their reluctance. They might not even be aware of it themselves, and you're going to have to be okay with that. This could basically be a whole video on its own, but the short version is this. Listen to your friends and be mindful of their feelings if you have any interest in having them join you at play. The second thing that I recommend is to make your game table feel like a safe place to fail. Nobody likes the feeling of everybody looking down on them, no matter what the reasons for their reluctance to play. So whatever you have to do to make sure everybody knows that they're not going to be judged for their skill or for their lack of skill. Maybe that means a bit of good-natured trash talking to show that we're not really serious. Or maybe it means a lot of gentle reassurance. Or maybe it means not inviting that one person who can't ever seem to resist the urge to be mean, Seffi.
What are you looking at me for? I am perfectly pleasant.
You can also provide a good example yourself by facing your own failures with grace and humor. Whatever it takes to put your players at ease, do that. And the third thing is to think carefully about which games you bring out. Game selection is kind of an art more than a science, and it has a profound effect on the emotional stakes at your game night. This is definitely another video of itself, but for now, short version, some games are designed to be low emotional stakes. These are usually light-hearted and silly. Others are designed for high emotional stakes. These tend to be more challenging and serious. And every player kind of has a sweet spot on that range, and it can move from one night to the next. And from a certain point of view, it might seem like low-stakes games are just better. And there's some truth to that. I mean, true confession, when I was younger and thought I was smarter, I had this unfortunate habit of disparaging people for playing games that were too light for me to really engage with. And of course, now I know that that was not only unhelpful, it was actively harmful. But my point is, I know that it doesn't do any good for me to tell people you're having fun wrong. It's absolutely true. But there's another truth behind that, and that is that if you're only comfortable playing when you know that either you'll win or you won't have to try, you're not getting the emotional nourishment that play is really for. That comes from sincerely trying, knowing you might not succeed. It comes from glorious failures that are met with laughter and acceptance instead of judgment and shame. Our culture is fundamentally hostile to play and playfulness. And I believe that this ideology, this terror of uncertainty, this pathological need to control every possible outcome has consequences. I believe it leads to societies where connection and trust are just too big a risk to be worth taking. And that erodes everything that's capable of creating joy for anyone, except the ones who can rig the system to make sure that they'll win every time. So many of the problems of the world, big and small, are unprecedented. We aren't going to solve them by doing things that we already know are going to work because we don't know for certain what will work. We need the freedom to try new solutions, things that haven't been done before. We need to rediscover the power and virtue of playfulness. And that is not going to be easy, no thanks to all this conditioning we've had against it. But I believe that the safest and easiest place to start is right here at the game table. Am I saying the board game can save the world? No, let's say that I think that learning the joy of playfulness in a safe context can embolden us to break free of the shame, fear, and need to be in control that all too often prevents us from even trying. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a really personal video for me, and I'm so grateful for the support and encouragement of our patrons. Thank you so much, folks. If you're in a position to help support the channel as well, consider joining them at patreon.com/JoanTheGamesMistress. You can get some really fun perks too, like voting on the topics for future videos on the channel, or having a monthly live chat with me and Seffi.
Yeah, where she can't edit me. Come on.
I'm actually thinking that the next video is going to be, whether the next poll is going to be a choice between the things that I mentioned this time should be a video in and of themselves. The next one that comes out actually next month is going to be one of the ones that was selected by the patrons, and that is what makes games funny. I've been researching the neuroscience of laughter for that one. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can hire me at joanthegamesmistress.com to help you make the most of your next game night. I'll help you pick just the right games for your group and make sure you're comfortable teaching them. Also, if you're curious about role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, I can help you and your friends to start your very own campaign. Now, if you can't afford to spend money on me, don't feel bad. You're already helping by coming back to watch our videos, clicking on the like button, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications to make sure that YouTube will notify you every time we put up a new video. Playfulness really is a complicated and important issue. The more people who connect with each other to talk about it, the better. So if you know someone who struggles with playfulness, share this video with them and tell us how they responded to it in the comments. And if you've found something that makes it easier or harder for the people in your life to approach games playfully, you should definitely comment about that as well. But remember, mean comments get deleted, mean people get banned, so play nice. Your turn.
Shoes! It's shoes, isn't it?
It's always shoes.
It's always shoes!
Never not shoes. And then it's time for show and tell.
Where you find out it was shoes.
Sometimes it's nothing more than personal taste. Some people have a preference for
Being boring.
or sticking with what's familiar and comfortable to them instead of, wading into uncharted waters,
Boring. Gee, baby, tell us how you really feel. Wait, I can't call you baby. This is a professional video. Jeez, Seppi. Hey, Joan, tell us how you really feel.
You see what I have to deal with.
You're editing that part out, right?
Probably.
Excellent. Probably.